So let us understand the situation. We are going into battle against a tough and determined enemy. I can't promise you that I will bring you all home alive. But this, I swear, that when we go into battle, I will be the first to set foot on the field, and I will be the last to step off, and I will leave no one behind. Dead or alive, we will all come home together. So help me God.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, manga chapter 586. And guys, I'm not gonna lie, it feels like ages since we talked Kingdom. It feels like a long time since we had a chapter. And with this actually being the first official chapter of the year, I don't think you could have started it off any better. I'm expecting the action to ramp up a lot as we get to the conclusion of this arc, and I think this battle between Ouhon and Gyou was a pretty good way to get things started. But after reading this chapter, guys, there were a couple things that really stood out to me, especially about Ouhon, that I'm going to actually save for the end of the review. But one thing's certain, man, this chapter actually started to bring back the hype, man, the hype that we're used to in Kingdom. The only problem is that after this chapter, we are back on break next week. So even though things are starting to pick up, all this hype is going to have to go on ice for a little bit.
Okay, breathe. Oh my God, okay. Bro, you gotta take them out. Just take them out.
Alright, so the chapter picks up right where we left off last week, and we see that Kanjo is the one thing standing in the way between Gyou and Ouhon. And with everyone in shock, Kanjo yells to Ouhon to keep going. And as Gyou winds up, Kanjo attempts to block his attack. But the power of Gyou is just too much for Kanjo to handle, as not only is his glaive destroyed, but he is also sent flying. Wasting no time at all, as Kanjo's falling, Gyou goes in for the kill. Kyoko and Shotaku can only watch in horror as they believe they're seeing their master's final moments. But then out of nowhere, you see the spear of Ouhon interfering with Gyou's plans to take Kanjo's life, as he is forced to pull back and move out of the way of Ouhon's deadly spear attack. And after seeing Gyou just barely dodge that attack, I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought back to chapter 524 when we saw Bananji have to dodge a very similar attack from Ouhon, showing that if you're in battle with Ouhon, your reflexes better be on point.
How do you feel your chances are in the AL East?
I mean, I love our chances. You know, it's been Dad, keep it on the field.
Seeing Ouhon come back for Kanjo has friend and foe alike completely shocked. At this point, everybody thinks that Ouhon is a fool for putting himself back in the middle of the Raigoku, even emphasized by one of the 10 spears throwing out their evil laugh. But nobody seems more pissed about Ouhon coming back than Kanjo himself, telling Ouhon that he's a complete idiot, asking Ouhon has he lost his mind. But Ouhon tells him to quit talking and fall back because they need to get out of this Raigoku before they're completely surrounded. And even though Ouhon reacts to Kanjo in like the normal fashion that we'd expect, to me Ouhon coming back says a lot about Ouhon and shows a lot of character development on his part. I kind of feel like Ouhon's always been this character, but I think due to his family background, he's been kind of putting up a front. But it's here where after seeing Gyou pretty much go on the offensive, that we see that from Shotaku's point of view, that Ouhon, while facing Gyou, won't be able to make his way out of the Raigoku, because the moment he shows his back to Gyou, all it'll take is one swing, and that will be the end for Ouhon. Back over at Ouhon, we see that after enduring this onslaught of attacks from Gyou, that Ouhon has lost all sensation in his arms, which isn't good because as a spear wielder, I'm pretty sure he's gonna need those. It's not an easy task to perform with no hands. But Ouhon, even though weakened, believes that he can muster 2 more thrusts at full strength, and even believes that that will be enough to bring down Gyou. And after asking for Kyoko and Shotaku to cover his sides, Shotaku realizes what Ouhon's plan is, that he intends to take out Gyou in these conditions. And even though we see him try to tell the young master to wait, we see that Ouhon has already made up his mind and is charging straight for Gyou. And we see that with adequate protection on his sides, Ouhon is allowed to fully focus on Gyou. And not only that, but he's also brimming with confidence because he believes that by him being able to defeat Earl Shi of the Wayfire Dragons, there's no reason that Gyou can't fall to his spear as well. And with that, he focuses all his power into his Dragon's Talon attack. And I'm not gonna lie guys, here I completely thought that Ouhon would fail, but this attack surprisingly lands, and not only does it land, it goes clear through Gyou's right arm. And just like everyone else on the battlefield, I was completely shocked to see this happen, because with this, it looks like Gyou has been crippled and Ouhon is on his way to soloing another relic of the past. And as Ouhon's going in with what appears to be his final attack, claiming that this is the end for Gyou, I couldn't help but to remember back to a couple of chapters ago when the narrator conveniently said,
"On this 13th day, a shock would run through the Chin right wing, that Ouhon would be defeated."
And apparently Gyou must have remembered these words too, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we see Gyou's supposedly handicapped arm raised high, clenching his glaive so hard that his forearm brace is literally cracking into pieces. But it doesn't stop there, because while Ouhon can't believe what he's seeing, Gyou hits Ouhon with so much power and force that not only does his spear no longer hold up, but his horse's legs snap like twigs under the pressure. Sending Ouhon crashing to the ground, but more importantly, on a one-way trip to La La Land. And while everybody in the Gyou is in a literal state of shock, Kanjo thinks to himself, why in the world would Ouhon have been so foolish to come back for the likes of him? And even though the Zhao think it's over, Kanjo reassures the Gyou that it's not over and that they need to get the young master to safety, and that he's dependent on Kyoko and Shotaku to get this done. Because Ouhon isn't someone who will meet his end here, which is countered by one of Gyou's men correcting Kanjo, saying not only will Ouhon die here, but along with him, Chin's entire right wing will also meet its end here. But Kanjo, coughing up blood, boldly proclaims that the right wing will not die. So long as the Gyou isn't wiped out there, then their right wing still has a chance, because the Chin right wing still has the He-Shin unit. And as we see Shin and the gang making their way across the battlefield, almost as if Ouhon heard the name of his rival, we see him twitch, showing the smallest signs of life, prompting Shotaku and Kyoko to realize that they need to get him out of there ASAP. And that was the chapter in a nutshell, guys. Alright guys, so that was an amazing chapter of Kingdom, and I probably have to say the best thing about this chapter had to definitely be the color page.
Just stop!
Nah, I'm kidding. It was a nice color page and all, but I just felt like this chapter was just a really good chapter. I mean, even though it was short, I feel like there is so much to talk about after reading this chapter. In the last review, guys, I discussed that I didn't think Kanjo was going to die. Why? Because I thought that this was going to be like something that was going to build up the relationship between Kanjo and Ouhon. I thought that Ouhon actually coming back would help to build some trust and loyalty between Kanjo and Ouhon. And even though we did get to see a little bit of that at the end of the chapter from Kanjo, another thing that really stood out to me about Ouhon going back for Kanjo was just how different Ouhon is from his father. Because to be honest, I could never imagine Osun doing something this reckless and going back for a subordinate at the risk of his own life. And when I really started to think about it, we've seen Ouhon do these types of things time and time again, and it's just starting to seem like this is actually the type of person Ouhon is. And the more I started to think about this, about how different Ouhon is from Osun, I started to wonder, what if Ouhon actually takes more after his mother? Which in any normal family, this probably wouldn't be a big deal, but in this particular family, with the relationship between this father and son, A small little theory that popped in my head while reading this chapter was, what if the reason that Ouhon really doesn't deal with Ouhon that much is because he actually kind of takes after his mother and it's just too much of a painful reminder to Ouhon about his deceased wife. But that's just me speculating. It's just something that popped in my mind while I was just thinking about how different Ouhon and Ouhon actually are from each other. But yeah, even though this chapter was called Two Thrusts, it seems like there was a lot more to analyze than just two thrusts. So the first thing I want to talk about with this fight is the fact that Ouhon brought up Earl Shea. Now this is important to me for a lot of reasons because Ouhon's biggest feat in the series has been, up to this point, Earl Shea. A lot of times people even like to say that Ouhon is stronger than Shin because of his fight with Earl Shea. Now me on the other hand, I've always viewed the monster trio like this. Moten is the smartest, Shin is the strongest, and Ouhon is a nice balance between both strength and brains. So when Ouhon said this Earl Shea statement, I kind of thought we would finally get like a definitive stamp that Shin is actually stronger than Ouhon here. But the problem is, even though we see that Gyou is stronger than Earl Shea, Ouhon actually did wind up landing a pretty significant blow on Gyou. So even when Shin does wind up defeating him eventually, it's still gonna feel like he got a little bit of help from Ouhon, because even though he's still fighting through that wound right now, he still has like a freaking hole in his arm. So he's definitely not gonna be at his best when he goes up against Shin. I almost want Shin to get like a wound of his own to make this a little bit more of a fair fight when they finally do meet up, just so it doesn't feel like he got help defeating Gyou, you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm actually making too big a deal about his wound, because we have seen examples of fights like the one between Kame and Mobu where these guys had bones coming out of their arms and they were still able to go all out. So maybe Gyou won't be as nerfed as I'm thinking. I mean, even with a hole in his arm, he was able to pretty much destroy Ouhon's spear, horse, and knock him out all in one blow. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually was kind of surprised that Ouhon's spear wound up getting bent like this. Like, I wasn't surprised that Kanjo's glaive got bent up earlier in the chapter, but when it comes to like the leaders of the units and things like that, I kind of see them as having like better weapons that are able to stand up better against other high tier opponents, which is how I always kind of rationalize the fact that a general's swing is able to cut through like fodder, weaponry, and armor, but when they're going up against another top tier guy, those rules usually don't apply to them. So I kind of thought Ouhon's spear was like a special weapon and wouldn't bend to an attack like that. And maybe it still actually was, but Gyou was just so strong that he was actually still able to damage it anyway. And another thing we need to talk about this chapter, which was something that Kanjo alluded to, is that with Ouhon down for the count, it looks like the entire right wing may actually have to come under the command of Shin. But before we get too excited about that, if Shin is actually able to take out Gyou right away, then I don't know really how much of an impact that will have, because think about it, Gyou is pretty much the main offensive for the Zhao left wing right now. But Nanji lost a significant portion of his army early in the battle, and Gyou seemingly up to this point pretty much looks like he's the brains and not the brawn of the Zhao forces. So I'm tempted to believe that if Gyou actually falls, then Zhao's left wing may actually retreat even closer to the center army and Raboku. But if they don't do that, then this would be a perfect opportunity for Har to take advantage of the entire Hishin unit and have some good quality moments from like Ten and Kyokai as we begin to wrap this arc up. Because seeing Kyokai take out one of these generals or seeing Ten outsmart Gyou on the battlefield would be a pretty cool way to give them some shine. But anyway guys, let's move on to the comment of the week. And this week's comment comes from Dave Diggs, and what he had to say was, I think Kanjo will be fine. Characters who end a chapter with a death cliffhanger hardly ever seem to die in Kingdom. Har usually saves deaths for the end of the chapter from what I've seen. And you know what, when I looked at this comment, I started to think about it and said, you know what, he actually has a point. Usually when it's a cliffhanger like that, people wind up living. And if Har's gonna take you out, he usually has enough respect to just take you out that chapter. And in all honesty, I just couldn't see Kanjo dying here. I think he has too much of an important role left to play in the story. And the only person that I actually saw who was actually expendable from this group of guys, to me actually always seemed like Banyo. And I still really don't think that he's out of the clear, even though things are looking a little better for him right now. Because to me, it would actually make more sense if Ouhon actually seen him die. And since Ouhon's knocked out, that's no longer a possibility. But you never know, he could still get taken out. And if it does happen while Ouhon's passed out, it would be kind of interesting to see how he reacted when he came to. But we'll just have to wait and see how everything winds up playing out. But anyway guys, that about does it for this week's review. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comment section below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out!